guess I live in Georgia because I followed a boy there. Come on. So hi, I'm Jessica. This is my first time in Israel. This is my first Israel food baby. I'm really proud of it. That you guys are keeping the food thing a big secret, and I think there should be a press release. It's amazing food, and I'm going to have to exercise for months. So we're going to talk about storytelling. I work with James, who was our DJ the other night and who is in the other room. And we do a lot of training around social media, not necessarily for social media's sake, but how it integrates with your marketing goals, whether you're a brand or a nonprofit. We shouldn't be in social media just because everyone's doing it. It should sort of track to your mission, track to your goals. But in order for it to work, we're going to have a word with James. In order for it to work, it has to be engaging. So the description of this session, I think, said, is your content falling flat? Are you not getting a lot of participation in what you're doing online? So we'll talk about storytelling. We'll talk about the elements of story, sort of in the meta sense, and then we'll talk about some of the platforms specifically, and then we'll do an interactive activity to sort of involve you in applying what we've talked about. But first, so I already said that. I want to know a little bit about who you are. Who are you? I don't claim to be an expert in anything, but I am a big believer that the collective wisdom in the room is always amazing, so we'll try to draw on that. One of the things that I think is so amazing about storytelling is how much power it has. Just this morning, Ruth Calderon talked about, told the story of the little one with the burned feet, and in that story, I think she made everyone in the room feel part of something larger than themselves, part of a collective. She made us feel part of a universe of popular nerds fighting for what was right against the grain of what was the norm, right? And she drew us all in through story, and we collectively sort of became one power, unified force for social good, and sticking to it all through story. And so the first thing I wanted to ask you before I sort of dive in is just thinking sort of your first thoughts. What would you sort of associate as, what makes a good story? Detail. Detail. You want to say more?
I don't know, you see this in good writing, like when a really specific word is used that allows you to very much feel or understand what was being conveyed as opposed to a more general word that may not sort of get to a deeper part of the story.
Conflict. Very
Just to be somehow personal, it has to speak to you personally.
Sure. What else?
Emotion.
Huh?
Emotion.
Emotion.
It has a clear structure.
Okay.
Not so obvious.
Not so obvious. Okay.
Yeah, I think it just has to remain within the range, and that's it.
So we're going to look at what the elements of story are, but we're going to do it because I think the purpose of the session was to contextualize it in social media, so in Facebook and Twitter, and some of what we're going to review about what makes a story great is going to be impossible to think about doing in 140 or 240 typewritten characters, but for the purposes of getting your message out through storytelling, the reason that storytelling is so important in social media is that, for example, how many of you have to run a Facebook page for an organization, a brand, a nonprofit? Many of you. You probably know now that you get people to like your page, but currently only if you post something, at best, if you're doing really well on a good day, organically 14% of the people who like your page are going to see that content, because now it's a revenue model they want you to pay. The only way to get your content to spread further without paying is for people to like it, comment on it, or share it, meaning they have to engage with it. And in order to engage with it, you need it to be compelling. It needs to, in some way, connect personally, inspire something in you, lure you in, right? So we're going to talk about what some of those elements of story are. The first element of the story is the contract, the promise we make at the beginning. Is this story going to be interesting, sad, inspiring? I'm not really sure, but there's some hint, some suggestion of what we might get. followed by the lure. I think this is what you spoke of. Draw them in lightly. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think there's oftentimes, I don't know about you, I'll be in a bookstore, I'll read the first sentence, put it down. If you can't catch me at the first sentence, then it's probably not the right story. The incident, the thing that sets everything in motion, the beginning of the conflict, for whoever said conflict. The reveal, where we begin to discover what is this story really about. The point of no return. The forces of good are faced with an impossible decision that concerns fear, safety, love, hate, revenge, or despair. Who said emotion? There's an emotional connection to the story, right? The mini climax. The forces of evil have an epic win in some way. This is a Star Wars reference. There's a lot. I'm a geek. I'm a nerd, which I feel really good about after Ruth's talk this morning. So it's all fine. But now, you know, the character who we're all behind, emotionally behind, all is lost, or it's seemingly lost. And we're rooting for that person. All is lost. We feel despair for the forces of good, but then there's news of hope. It might be good to keep reading. Something good might happen. Good triumphs over evil again. The end. There's resolution, relief, love, forgiveness, evolution. So what? So I think the important thing, if you're writing for your brand, so I didn't realize I would have so many journalists in the room. We typically do this training for brands or nonprofits trying to tell their story, so you'll have to adapt with me a little bit if you're a journalist. But I think the most important thing in social media, I think people think you're doing it on the fly. I actually recommend that you're not. You're creating an editorial calendar. For me, this is a spreadsheet with one column is the date, one column is the time it'll be published, one column is it Twitter, is it Pinterest, is it Facebook? One column is the copy, the text. One column is, does it have a photo with it? And I'm creating sort of a campaign-based arc week over week. What kind of content are we sharing? What, for some of the Jewish-based or faith-based organizations, that might be, you know you're going to have to create content around Seder. You know you're going to have to create content around other holidays. You can think creatively far in advance and plan that so that you can respond in real time. You have more time to do the real-time response. But so you have to decide what story you want to tell. Think it through. I would recommend creating a storyboard, especially in social media, because going back to the point about engaging, a lot of people sort of type, share, without stopping before they publish and say, would anyone retweet this? Would anyone share this to their own Facebook page? Is there any reason to comment on this? Would I comment on it? People very rarely ask themselves that, and you really need to do that if you want to create that engagement, if you want to get that additional spread for the content. There has to be, if you're a nonprofit, for example, a call to action. What is the action you want me to take? Do you want me to discuss? Are you asking me a question? And I can't tell you how many people say, you know, do you like this? What are the possible answers to do you like this? Yes or no. Can you imagine a feed full of comments? Yes or no? Yes. It's not going to happen, right? Yes, 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 no. It's not a conversation. So I think if you are creating an editorial calendar for your social media of the stories you need to tell over the arc of time, and thinking through not only your writing and picking the right words and making it a story, but also deciding, is it engaging? And so part of that would be getting personal. Who said the personal connection, right? And then write terrible first drafts. Write them short. Okay, so the internet, if you're writing for the internet, especially the journalists, I think this is an important point. We're used to, in a magazine, very dense text, for example, or in a book, very dense text. On the internet, people have the attention span of a tiny flea. And so even though it seems counterintuitive, and your school writing teacher would probably, you know, wrap your knuckles with a ruler, I often, when writing for the internet, write a sentence, hit return. White space. Write a sentence, hit return. The more white space there is in internet writing, the more you're just asking the reader to read one sentence. And if you lure them in then they have the promise of the second sentence, but it's not a big commitment. All right, I'll read the second sentence, and so on. Whereas if you have a big block of dense text on your computer screen, most of us, our initial reaction is like, oh, no, right? I don't even want to try the first sentence. It's too much of a commitment, because I might, something shiny might happen over here on my screen any minute, right? So write short, leave a lot of white space. Read it out loud. Again, this is advice, not just to hear how it sounds, but again, is there any reason for you to engage with it at all? Don't hold back. Find the narrative arc, right? All the elements of the story. Now again, you're in 140 characters in Twitter or you're in Facebook. You're going to have to sort of pare that down or think that through. Maybe pick sort of where am I in the story. Did you have a question?
I was just going to ask if you talk about the don't hold back. That feels like actually a big...
Say more about your question about it.
Like, there's a lot of like not holding back enough, it feels like. Or there's like definitely, I think, a relationship between holding back too much and not holding back enough in social media. And I don't know if others are interested in that or if that we can like parking lot that conversation. But
we can take a minute if you want to talk about it. Can you give a specific example of a struggle that you have around that?
Well, I mean, like many of us, I'm sure, read different people's and organizations' Facebook feeds. We'll use that instead of Twitter. It's a little bit more personal. And I find that actually when people like do share in a pretty honest, voice or a pretty raw voice, I'm attracted to it. But that definitely sometimes goes too far, and I feel like, I mean, it's sort of a personal thing, but I think there's blurry lines there in terms of what works and what doesn't, and like how much you're trying to work with your, really knowing your audience or reading your audience, and I think it's something like I struggle with myself. Sometimes I feel like, did I really, in real life and online, but like, did I really need to share that, or, or like, and then you share and you want to take it down or put it away or not, like, so.
Does anyone else have an experience or a thought on that?
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I experience a similar struggle, and I experience the additional struggle of clutter in the social media space. I feel like in some ways there's this oversaturation of content and material to the extent that I'm so overstimulated that it's very hard to focus my attention, like you were saying, for an extended period of time on one story, or to even like allow for the fullness of the story to penetrate an audience. So I'm curious to hear your perspective on, and actually everyone's perspectives on clutter and stories in the social media space.
It's interesting that you bring up two things that are usually this part of our training is at the end of a really intensive deep dive on Facebook and Twitter and some other platforms on like how do they actually work for branding purposes, and how do you use them in a corporate or nonprofit setting, and what kind of etiquette exists on each platform, and what kind of frequency of post, and how do you find your corporate voice. And I think it's very challenging what you're saying. The social media platforms do require a sort of transparency or personalness that traditional corporate communications finds abhorrent. Your traditional communications and marketing manager just finds the whole approach to social media like anathema. Awful. Oh my God. You're not going to say that, really, on our behalf? And there is a balance to be struck and a way to find the brand's voice. And the lucky thing is if you're just beginning to put your brand into social media, you have no followers, so you can make a lot of mistakes and sort of practice finding the voice. I think it depends on your organization, right? But one good rule of thumb is not to air your dirty laundry or to bring meanness, a mean spirit to the internet, because that attracts like, and you'll suddenly have a lot of mean-spirited people involved with your page, which is not what you're interested in. And we do a whole training on that. But I think that in terms of finding your voice, it's difficult when you're finding the voice of a brand. It's one thing if we're finding our own voice. If I'm sitting in front of Twitter thinking, should I put this on the ROICom hashtag or not? As we're in the sessions, that's just me. If I was representing an organization, I would have to think, put a whole nother layer on it. Would my organization say this? And you're almost responsible for developing the personality of your brand, which it hasn't had in the past. It's just had this corporate, very flat, shiny, printed, material, and suddenly it's three-dimensional and it's warm and human. And how does that sound? And that can be very difficult to explore, but you can, I recommend that you talk with your colleagues in the office about, or return to your branding page about what are sometimes in a branding exercise, and if any of you have done that, your organization will have adjectives that describe the brand, and sometimes you can apply those adjectives to the voice. The voice is savvy, the voice is clever, the voice is whatever your adjectives are. Does that help? But I think in this context, don't hold back means just try, just write, and then edit later, right? So we talked about that. Watch your pace. I can't tell you how many times. So just using Twitter as an example, but it applies to Facebook too. You only have 140 characters. But if you use them all and someone tries to retweet it, it's truncated, it's cut off. It doesn't fit. So it's important to use less than the allowable, which in the United States, when I was growing up for writing, we used to read a particular book on grammar, and it said, omit needless words. So important. How tight can you get it? Reduce, reduce, reduce. You do not need to say it the big flowery way. You need to say it with the most precise words and the fewest of them possible, and you need to make it salient and tight and meaningful so that people are like, yes! And they want to share it too, right? They want to get the same content out. They want to repeat you. They want to spread your story, spread your message. And so I think your timing needs to be tight. And again, when you read it aloud, you can feel that. This is, I think, also, yeah?
The thing with most NGO is that their idea, most of the time, is very complex. And what I feel with the social media is that you always stay on the, it's not a deep conversation, it's a low level, and it's sometimes I feel it's like unrespectful for my idea to put it on Facebook in such a short term, and like
I think that's
it's like.
Does anyone else feel that way? So here's how I would counter argue to you. This is a piece of your marketing puzzle. It's not your entire approach, right? And imagine if you went to, I've heard Facebook called like a neighborhood block party, and Twitter is a business cocktail party. And if you went to that kind of party and talked about your organization, you're meeting people you've never met before in both places, let's say, and you want to talk about your organization, the tone and tenor of your language would be completely different in those two parties than it would be when you're giving a press release to news media about your agency or your company, right? You're at a barbecue, you're sort of talking casually about your company, but you're taking a first and very small step with potential supporters and stakeholders in those platforms. It's sort of like networking or a meeting place. It's the place where you can boil it down. This is a sort of succinct overview. Are you interested? And if they're interested, you draw them in and you try to get their email address and add them to your email marketing campaign, and to engage them in to come for a volunteer project or come take action or enroll in a course or whatever it is that your goal is. This is the place where you're meeting new people. And we don't walk into a business party and say, hi, I've never met you. Would you like to donate $50 to my organization? Like that would never work, right? But I would probably go to the party, and I'd kind of sidle up to Younes and hear what he was talking about, and he's talking about making a video, and I'd ask him questions about his video because I want to make a friend. I'd show interest in him until he invites me to tell about myself, and I would then start telling a little bit of my story, and if he's interested, I'd tell a little bit more. And if he's interested enough that we need to come out of this platform and go to email or come in person to our orientation, we would do that. Okay. Someone had a question. You did. Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of curious, and I'm totally fumbling my way through this, but I'm trying to use our Facebook page as a way to create a community and create a dialogue, and I don't know exactly if Facebook is the right place for that, and I hoped it was, or it would be, or could be, but trying to get people to be more active as far as posting the things they're doing, informing each other about the things that they think other people would find interesting, to really make it a place where, kind of like a block party or community board, people could post all the things that they're doing, or inviting people to things, or advertising their own, and it's sometimes people put things up, but it's just not enough chatter going on the page. And I guess
It's a page,
Yeah.
because you're describing a Facebook group.
Right.
So you're in the wrong function. But if you are, a lot of nonprofits are terrified of groups because you lose total control, you give up complete control of the conversation. But if that's your goal and you're willing to do that, a Facebook group can do that and it can work immediately. And if you want to set up office hours, I can teach you how to do it. It's super easy. You can make the group invisible, not searchable unless you're invited. You can make it searchable but by invitation only, or you can make it open access. But that's where a group is more of a conversational space. The page, if you think about it, we all like pages. Like maybe you even have liked the ROI page. How many of you have gone back to visit their actual page? Right? If it doesn't come up in your feed, in your news feed, you're not going to go there. So the idea of coming to your page to post content, it's not how we think about Facebook. I might post the conversation you want me to have on your page on my own page, right? Whereas in a group, I'm part of a group of people. There's a group online. If you're in social media for a nonprofit, there's a group I can invite you to that's 400 people who run social media for nonprofits, constantly asking each other questions and crowdsourcing the answer. Does anybody know a platform that can do this? And so on. And it's really helpful if that's useful to you. Read it to a friend. These are actual kids in my neighborhood I stumbled upon one day. I was like, I love you. Can I take your picture? Read it aloud, and the feedback, or can be a colleague at the next desk. Would you like this on Facebook? Would you interact with it in any way? If the answer is no, you've got to do it again.
It's like you need to pay a lot of attention. You write a first draft, and then you did somebody. I mean, I encounter that. It takes a lot of energy.
It really does.
And if it's not your main job, it takes a lot of attention.
No, it takes hours to research something to make it also applicable for this kind of media.
And meanwhile, your boss thinks you're just messing around on the internet all day, and it's difficult.
Can I ask a related question?
Yeah.
So I've heard multiple opinions about the statistical significance of likes in terms of building a brand. So, like, can you measure your visibility via likes? Can you measure your visibility in terms of shares? So, in terms of my own personal social media digestion, I like a lot of things. I don't actually share a lot of things, and it's not because I don't want to share them, and it's not because I'm lazy. It's just that for some reason, it's almost like there's a lower barrier ask when you like than when you're actually pushing it out to the network. And certain things I like, I feel will not be relevant to, a segment of people in my Facebook community, so I don't share. So I'm curious, in terms of reading something to a friend, do you ask a different question related to will you like it and will you share it? And what's the value of merit? Like sort of breaking the like and the share into two different questions.
Does anyone else have a thought? Back to the collective wisdom. Yeah.
When you share something on Facebook, I discovered that I can share to a certain group, like I make lists. So I have people who I, share something on, like specifically for them. If I'm doing advocacy for Israel, so I have all my contacts in San Diego where I worked in advocacy, and I can share it. And they're the only ones who.
So you control where it appears?
Yes.
That's so interesting. I didn't know.
And I discovered that by accident. That can be useful.
You can do that with any post, even on your own personal Facebook page. You can just decide by geographic area, or by, if you could create a list of.
Filter? You just
Sure. You could say, only show this to my Jewish friends, only show this to my friends in Germany, whatever you want.
All my personal friends, everybody's in a certain group, so that way I can post it in a certain group. I don't have any general friends that are not in any group. I can play with it.
So just next time you make the lists.
Exactly, especially when you have more than 1,000 friends.
Right.
So I just go, people you don't know, people that they don't even share where they are from or something. It's hard to filter.
But in terms of answering your question from a marketing perspective, right? In traditional media, we were measuring our success by media impressions, right? How many people did this potentially reach? I think it's 3 times the subscription to the publication or something like that. It's how it's calculated. In social media, the similar measurement is reach. How many people saw this or potentially saw this content. That's the only apples to apples measurement. But if you think about social media, just because it supposedly went in someone's Facebook or Twitter feed doesn't mean they actually saw it. But what's exciting about it being on a computer is there's more data. I think social media is in some ways more interesting than traditional media because there's more to measure, right? And so we measure engagement. So a like, a comment, a share, a retweet, they're all forms of engagement, and we sort of calculate how much engagement we have. And then we can, I'm getting a little bit technical, but we look at a engagement to audience ratio, and there's sort of a norm. So are you doing better than alcohol and fast cars, or are you doing worse? And then just in terms of likes, a like is in terms of how you spread, how many more people are going to see the content. A like is the weakest spread, then a share, then a comment, then a share. So the ultimate, like, would you share this? And just, I'll get to it soon, but think about what you share. It's often a graphic, sometimes with a statement. And people feel like this represents me. I do a lot of consulting with Schusterman, and one of their single most shared post was when do you remember the equality campaign when everyone changed their avatar? Benny Cohen, who was running social media at Schusterman at the time, changed theirs to the equal sign but with matzah. Share. Everybody took it, shared it. 712 people or something. So suddenly their reach and the awareness about Schusterman went way up. And it wasn't a post about diversity and inclusion. It wasn't a post about the environment or anything really. It was, well, I guess it was in a way about diversity and inclusion, wasn't it? So, but it was very boiled down. It was very simplistic representation of their values that worked in social media. So I think we've talked about this, right, and telling it to a friend. Does this inspire your audience to do anything at all? If not, then no. I was in a session with Josh Burstein yesterday, who worked on the Obama campaign, and he was presenting that some data findings say that annoying actually works. Like, go ahead and ask for what you need. I would say that I would maybe add the exception of fundraising in social media. There's not a real high return on investment on that yet. And I think that's to my earlier point of we are making friends, and we don't ask them for money when we first meet them. We ask them after they're somewhat invested in the effort. So, but otherwise, I think if you want people to do something, ask them. Even if it means engage in this conversation. Share this to your post. Again, I think we've covered that.
Can I ask you a question? Where do you stand on the whole please like, share?
I think if you do it too much, you seem a little pushy. If it's very urgent, once in a while, it works, actually. I don't often do it, but I've seen the statistics that if you're willing to do it sometimes at the right times, people will.
Like once a week?
Well, I don't know. It depends on your voice and what your issue is, but people will retweet it if you ask them. So you turn your story into digital media. And so I want to talk about photos because in terms of sharing, first of all, statistically on Facebook and Twitter, the photos are the ones that get the most attention. Also video, I don't know if you know that 54% of people will rather watch a video than read text. I'm not one of them, but I can read it faster than I can watch it, and I have the internet attention span. But a photo tells a story. This is a rape victim telling her story at an anonymous rally in Ohio in the US. It's a very powerful photo for the cause. It's, very striking. So the use of visuals can be particularly important in social for storytelling. I think there's a lot of the arc of her story implied in this photo, right? All the elements that we've talked about. I don't know if I can click through to this video. What if I'm going to break you up into small groups to do something, so I'll mess with it while you're doing that and see if I can show it to you at the end. But this is under a minute that, it's not about Tiananmen, it's just one of the photos, one of the clips in it. It's only a 1-minute video, but it's about the power of video, but I'll try to show it to you before you leave. Okay, so let's talk about the platforms. Facebook, this is a simple story. This is, I want you to look at the numbers first. Almost 5,000 likes, 107 comments, 721 shares. So this is a badge approach to what's something that someone would share. What's funny about this is Anybody have any idea whose Facebook page this would be from? You'll never guess in a million years. It's from a spaghetti sauce, okay? But their marketing goal is to connect with moms and to simplify meals and to connect with them as parents, right? So they asked, in a different post, they asked a question of, tell us a story about the hecticness of getting kids ready for school. And this was one of the comments. So someone commented on their post. This was the whole comment. My son locked the bus driver out of the bus. He said a bee was trying to get on, and since the bee was not a school kid, he had to make sure it didn't go to school. Whole story, very short. So they gave it a graphic treatment, put a little bee. Oh, it says Ragu. You could have guessed. Ragu fan gave accreditation and then made content out of the comment of one of the fans, and it had, 7-fold engagement to the original post. And what I like about that is just the idea that sometimes people ask about, how do you crowdsource content? How do I get people to submit content that tells our story for us? Sometimes you have to pretty it up, but they give it to you in the form of comments or in a tweet, and you can repurpose it and share it with the broader audience. In this case, I think once someone comments on your page, it's sort of fair game. And they're also saying that they got it from her without saying her last name or anything. So I think that's really fine. Another sort of, and what's also good is, remember when I said if you create your editorial calendar, so all your stuff that you have to cover, whether it's, I don't know, it's this time of year, and so now we're talking about this campaign that we're doing, and all that content is all the creative is done, it's scheduled, that's all going to go live on its own. That gives you time as a storyteller to capitalize on what's happening in real time. Someone made a comment on this post, it was really cute, we think our audience will, cute, it was whatever your brand words are, it really resonates with the brand, we're going to repurpose that in content. If you've got your basic editorial covered and scheduled and planned, then you have time to respond in real time, which is what really works for engagement on the internet better than anything else. So they had time to do this as a side fun thing. And then another example of that is Oreos. In the US, there's the Super Bowl, the biggest football game of the year. And at the last Super Bowl, the power went out for 45 minutes. Now, Oreo had bought an ad, which costs some millions of dollars for a short ad. But when the power went out, their creative team was sort of working to produce content in real time, and it says, this is Twitter, it says, power out, no problem, you can still dunk in the dark. This is a cookie in the United States that people like to dunk in milk before they eat. This particular tweet was shared 16,000 times, and 6,000 people clicked it as a favorite, and it had more audience and more reach than their ad that they spent millions and millions of dollars on, and this cost them nothing, right? So they're responding in real time. Oreo's really good at that. Here's another example. Laura Ellen tweets, can you tell I like chocolate a bit too much? I'm following Kit Kat and Oreo. For those who aren't from the States, Kit Kat's a candy bar, Oreo's a cookie.
It's available everywhere. We have it in World.
You have it everywhere? Okay. Kit Kat then tweets, the fight for Laura's affection is on. Oreo, your move. And they start a tic-tac-toe game with Kit Kats, okay? And Laura Ellen is the customer. She is beside herself. Oh my God, I am in heaven, all caps. She's screaming, she's delighted, right? So Oreo, suddenly Oreo's like, game on, Kit Kat. And they're powwowing, thinking about what they're gonna do. And very quickly, they say, sorry, Kit Kat, we couldn't resist. They like Kit Kats too. They just ate it. They did not get in the game of tic-tac-toe. They said, give Oreo a break. And it's completely gracious and fun. It doesn't create a polarization or a contest between the two brands. It creates a camaraderie. The customer is delighted. And this is all real time, capitalizing on what's going on the internet, which they have time for, because their planned marketing is all thought through and the creative is done in advance so that they have time for this.
I think it's actually, I love the Oreo Facebook page. I'm not such a social media guru, but I love Oreo because for literally almost every day of the year, they somehow managed to create a graphic that relates to International Workers' Rights Day or, National Vegetable Day. So,
well, that's their marketing plan. They're actual, like if you go to their agency who runs their media, their digital agency campaign is, a meme a day. And they're watching what's trending on the internet and they're jumping on that trend, figuring out how to connect it, which you can do too. If you're on Twitter, Twitter's the easiest way to find out what's trending in Twitter keywords and figure out, can I connect this in any way to my organization, which you have time for if you've already got I keep picking on Seder, but if you've got all the Seder campaigns organized, now I can screw around with whatever's going goofy on the internet today if it connects to your brand voice. Otherwise, you have to, there are some things that don't. If you're a very serious organization, you can't really capitalize on the goofiness of Oreo.
So I just have a quick question about the actual implementation of doing something like that. So they have a team of graphic designers. They do. So they have hundreds of a little army of graphic designers that are let's come up with a
I think they have a team of 10 people who are focused on. They have a command center, like a listening post, where they're sort of tracking internet trends across various platforms on big screens, all in a room, and they're sitting there and riffing off each other and brainstorming all day long. It's a luxury for sure. So. This is Instagram. How many of you are using Instagram? So Instagram is a photo sharing platform. We've been using it at ROI. And this is Charity Waters. Charity Waters thought is one of the nonprofits doing the best work with social media out of New York. And interestingly, I think the founder of Charity Water used to be someone who would just host raves, like big electronica music parties. And so he's got a promotional mentality. He's a promoter at heart. Right? And I think that's why they excel. But all of their pictures tell a story. And in office hours, I've been talking to a few people about what I like about Instagram is both that you can publish, you can filter your photos and change them a bit. You can also share them directly to Facebook, though I would advise against that. If anyone cares why, I will tell you later. But what I like about it is it has the use of hashtags like Twitter, but Twitter tends to be a very business-to-business platform. Lots of all kinds of people who you might want to reach are using Instagram, but it also has that hashtag feature, so people can discover you through keywords. So if a keyword is Jewish or Israel or democracy or whatever your issue might be, if you tag the photos with that hashtag, people will discover your organization that way because it's a very, very, very popular platform. There's also, remember we talked about that ragu ad and people creating something that is a photo that tells a story that people want to share often can involve make it shareable by putting your text across it. I don't know how many of you we see, maybe it's just a screen with a quote, maybe it's a picture with a quote. There are lots of online photo editors. This is one that's internet based where I put Justin's picture and just stamped International Man of Mystery on his head. We all want to share that to our page, I'm sure. But you could create something that tells the story of your organization both visually and with some text, but tells it in a way that if I support what you're doing, I want to put that photo on my page because it's like having a sign in my yard for a politician. I support this, right? That's the way to get a share, is to make it something that we all want to sort of put a stake in the ground and say, me too. Pixlr, P-I-X-L-R. Apparently all internet apps hate vowels, hate them.
What is it?
Oh, it's a photo editor that allows you to lay the text over. Okay? YouTube, obviously, if you're doing video, it's a great tool. I don't think we need to explain YouTube. But there are some other, is anyone using Vine?
It's awesome. It's like the best tool of all time ever created.
Vine allows you to be a movie producer in, 6 seconds?
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's taking off. Twitter bought it. It's like Instagram, but with video. So same thing. You download it to your phone. You shoot a movie with your phone. It's a very interesting platform, but it's a little new. If you're new to doing social media for your brand, it's not your first stop.
But can I just
yeah.
say something? I don't mean to interject.
No, please do.
But it's so great. I've never used it for this, but I fully intend to. If you ever need testimonials or something, you can just do quick cuts. You can be
with your phone.
Yeah, I mean it's so easy. You can be like a complete idiot and use it and look like you can put something really cute together within a period of 6 seconds.
He just walked out, but I put the Mouthmatic guy. What's his name? Jay? Is that Jay?
Yes.
I put him on my Vine when he was performing the other night. But some of these other things like Videolicious, if you have a lot of photo images but not the video, on PowerPoint you can make that like they're doing on the screens. Videolicious will make a sort of slideshow that you can then share in social. And those are all, Social Cam is a way that you can shoot video from your phone and then share it to Facebook. And there are tons and tons of platforms. Even if you're in the App Store or the Android App Store on your phone, you search photo editors and video editors. You get tons of apps to explore that help you create compelling stories in different formats to drive that engagement. And this is Pinterest. How am I doing on time? I'm about to say y'all. How am I doing on time, y'all? Okay, great. So this is Pinterest. How many people use Pinterest? It's not necessarily something I would put top of your list, although it's got the third highest usership, so Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, but the second highest amount of time spent on the platform. It skews mostly women, and they spend almost, they're starting to rival Facebook in terms of how much time they spend on the platform. So if it's your audience, it could be useful. But it has some creative graphic ideas. This is an organization. This is an ad to apply for a job, and I don't know if you can tell from here, but they've used it in a graphic way so that it's telling the story across the fronts of boards. That might be too complex, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but if you're interested, I can show you more about that later. All right, so we have about 30 minutes left. What I would like to do is there are flip chart paper here and torn off at the back and markers. I'd like everybody to find a partner, maybe someone that you haven't met or worked with, doesn't really matter. And you're going to have about 10 minutes to design a story about your ROI experience here together. And your goal is that this is a storyboarded Facebook post. And then after you're done, we're going to, if we can, hang them up. If not, we'll just lay them in a line on the floor. And I'll give you something to use as a like or a comment. And we'll see who gets the most engagement, right?
For Facebook, you said.
This is going to be, imagine you're creating a Facebook post together, telling a story of ROI that engages everyone else. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? Okay, so find a partner.
Actually, I do have one question.
It can be whatever you want. Your goal, it doesn't really matter. The point is, are these people going to like it or comment on it? They can't share it in this context, but your goal is to, and I have little notes that you can stick on to be a like, or you can write on to be a comment, and whoever gets the most wins. So the goal is tell a story that makes people participate in your story.
You can also share it with other masters.
If you want, you could actually put it on Facebook later, but there's flip chart paper in both places. Yeah.
One question. So if part of the story involves an image, but we don't actually have the artistic ability to capture the image, so we can write like
just draw and be like, this is supposed to be a, you can, yeah. All right, so you've got like 10 minutes. Ready, set, go. There will be a winner.
Topics or conversations, like the different thought leaders, and then the different discussions you have in the hallway that you just bombard in people and ideas. Okay, so those are two themes.
Bring them to the center maybe, or spread them out so we can walk around and look at them.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, ready? Oh, thank you. Sorry. So I need everybody to leave your post in the middle. And these Post-it notes are, if they're blank, they're likes. Or you can write on them if you have a pen. And that's a comment. So your job now is to take some of these and pass them on.
How many do we get?
As many as you want.
We're allowed to like as many as we want?
Yeah.
But then everyone will win, because we want to.
You can't like your own. And I mean, let's like be a little discerning. Be yourself. Be what you would be like on Facebook. If you would comment on it, then comment. If you would like it, then like it. If you wouldn't, move on. And also, Sarah, I would just say, if we're all winners, is that so wrong? No. All right, so take some, pass them around. You take a couple, and so you wanna go ahead and comment or like on the posts. And when you're done, sit in your chair, and we'll talk about each one. You can have as many. Oh, she only gets one. A like is a blank post-it. A comment is obviously.
Get some more post-it.
Well, write your comment.
Oh, I see.
right, so let's unpack this application of what you've learned. Da, da, da. I would say that the winner of likes is you after 3 days post. Who did that? Who's the team? Stand up if this is your post. Woo! Way to go. But I also want to point out that the musical one got the most comments, which probably would get more reach ultimately because it also got a lot of likes. Whose is that? Also a winner. Woo! You guys thought. Now these guys pulled through in the clutch. They didn't think they were going to have anything. So let's talk about the posts. Let's start with this one. What worked about this one? Your feelings after 3 days. What worked? Thinking about the context of storytelling for the purpose of engagement to this audience, what worked?
It was funny, and I could relate to them.
The last sentence and the room number for me, because at first I read it, I was like, but then I noticed the room number thing on 4 and then all of the above, and I was like, oh, it's funny, because I was thinking it's more like a spiritual thing. In the beginning that, I want to change the world, blah, blah, blah. But now I see that it's more of a fun thing. So.
Right? Yeah.
I asked a question, and I, for some reason, had the impulse I wanted to answer it. Yeah.
There was a call to action. What is your answer? What else worked about it? So humor. I think the other thing about the humor is we talked about these are platforms where you're making friends. It's not where you're like doing your most earnest work, but one of the ways that we draw people to us is through humor, often, especially on the internet.
It was simple and easy to read. Like some of the things I didn't quite understand.
Okay, we will get. It's very simple, yeah. And how about the song one? That one I think was second. Why do we like?
The last, we hope it's not losing my religion. That was very attractive. Like.
Very funny use of pop culture, right? It sounds like even the international folks know that song, right? So it was. Drawing on a pop culture reference that we all know. Also on this one, for me, I don't know about you, if someone says, what song does this remind you of? I don't know why, but you know, our connection to music, I'm running through my iTunes files like without trying, yeah.
It has limitless possibilities. It feels like they go on forever.
That's true, absolutely true.
I
Yeah.
really liked this one here. I actually don't know what the hangman was, but somebody had put the D down, so I put the A down, and it was so easy to know what to put down. Whereas when I was at that one, I was like, oh, I don't know which one I want. But other people might judge whatever I choose, whichever way I go. And so this one was so easy to get a comment that you wouldn't be embarrassed about.
Interesting. What did other people feel about the hangman?
I actually didn't, I know what hangman is. I didn't actually understand how it would be applied. Like I didn't know how to implement that in real Facebook, but that's possibly because I'm not so, my visual interpretive skills are not great, so I was sort of looking at it being like, what? So.
Yeah, I struggled because if you left the A in a comment on Facebook, it wouldn't show up there, so I was...
So it's meaning that you could create a Facebook post where it was so easy to know what's going to, not that you couldn't do that obviously on Facebook, but that would then be valuable. You get a lot of comments. And then the goal is to get a lot of engagement and then engage that with their friends.
But how do you, but how would you actually, how would you do something like that? You don't think you can do it? Okay, got it. Okay.
We should send this to myself.
Right. What about, while I'm here, the Den, the arts and culture, this one?
It's we did it. It's a photo of objects that we collected during these 4 days. So it's like they're put on a table, so to speak, and we use graphic work to like add comments to explaining what is each object. So this is like what we're taking from ROI in terms of like objects and associations with this object. So there is like the badge, the Rwanda passport because there's someone here from Rwanda, there's the beer bottle, there is the business card, and like to know who this business card belongs to, this kind of stuff.
That helps a lot. Any feedback on what worked or could have been made this one better?
It's too much text to read for the one thing, so this Facebook attention span is like 3 seconds, and It's too complicated.
Yeah, maybe too many.
It needs maybe a big title, or it needs one message which dominates.
You need to digest it more quickly.
I think it's also supposed to be really clear where it starts and where it ends. And you bring right to that. This is
More circular.
And I think on Facebook that one will be much more clear, because then you know.
Yeah, because you have like a caption explaining what it is. Yeah.
Who else said
No,
that?
my comment was also about like you don't know how to follow it. It was a little bit like looking at different things, but you don't know how it should be, as you said, how it should be planned. Like if there were numbers like 1, 2, 3, you would better tell us more of where you want us to go.
Okay. So it's a good illustration of the difference between very simple and clear versus abstract or confusing. What about the latte? There's got to be something in the latte, because how many lattes? Is everyone drinking as many lattes as I? Like, very straightforward, right? Very simple. But this one, 24 hours to go. That one probably got the least engagement. Can the group give some feedback about why?
It was ours. We started quite late, and I think we've had trouble finding our voice between us. So that I think was one issue. We liked this, like setting a clock or an alarm or some kind of version of time. I think I wanted to provoke. Like, I really don't like literal communication. I connect much more with visual communication when you see a picture and you can interpret it your own way. And given that I can't draw, that's sort of hard to do. So I don't know if you want to talk about the hug and wrestle thing.
No, it would just be really interesting to hear, because I think it's really funny. And it's from the panel yesterday where they said hug and wrestle, and we wanted to live the intimate conversation. But how come it didn't resonate?
But for me, like what turned me off is the title, actually. Because I redid the other one, and I think the could this last forever, and it's kind of the same, but it just evokes different emotions. So this kind of meaning of that.
Exactly. So
It's good.
I don't want to continue reading.
And this is like could it last forever? We know it can't last forever, but it makes it kind of it's nicer and more emotional.
Oh, interesting. Sorry, you had one next, and then you were next.
Okay, so for me, 24 hours to go is time bound. And so unless you're actually posting it 24 hours before the end of something, I don't know what kind of lifespan that actually has. So that's why for me I was like, well, I would only post this and I would only like it and share it if it were actually 24 hours before the end of the summer. Does that make sense?
Yes, very much so.
Or it says something dramatic, something really dramatic. So it's for me.
I might not want to admit who I want to hug and who I want to wrestle, but you know. What about you?
I just kept thinking I want to be sedated. But that not literally.
I
already feel sedated.
I'm like, I'm not sure what she's saying, but the Ramones are like.
Yeah, I just kept thinking about the Ramones. I mean, I'm just, that's all I associated.
That kind of goes to the latte one for me. Like, well,
and I just think that the choice of words was too specific for for me at least. That's all I kept thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if we would have had a different reaction if they actually posted that video as a song, if we would have responded any differently. Any other comments about the post, feedback to your peers about what worked and what didn't?
I'm just looking at this one.
Oh, we didn't talk about that one, yeah.
I've been counting out all the likes, and that one got 12, and that one got 11, so it came second. So one
Oh,
that team-wise. But what I really like about it is that it really summed up absolutely everything about the conference. There's, we're all from everywhere. It was just fantastic, and I think that's why I got a lot of likes. But there wasn't a call to action in terms of comment, which is okay, but it got a lot of likes.
Depending on how cool that was visually, it could have gotten a lot of shares from the audience, right? Like, I want to show my friends what I'm doing here, and this encapsulates it all. Maybe. I mean, I can't say because we didn't have something to represent a share. But does that seem possible if it was really sort of in a succinct, tight, beautiful way?
Yeah, because I would feel as an individual coming from a country, it represents me. And, and maybe everyone else would feel that it represents him or her, and they would like to share it with the world, or they're on their own Facebook wall.
We should have done the question mark.
Yeah.
The last thing we did was putting you, and we were like, do we put a question mark or do we put a period? And so maybe we should have done the question mark because then it would have been a call to action.
An invitation.
To say, share this. Who are you in this mosaic? In this?
Or you should come next year, or yeah.
I just want to share with the group, I met this really young professor from Walton last year. He visited here called Jonah Berger. He's also, so it's a really young Jewish professor who's dealing basically with why people like and share things. And I don't remember all of these, he looked basically on papers in the New York Times. He tried to figure out what's the right equation. It should be like emotional, but not emotional, not in a devastating or overwhelming way. And I just recommend finding his papers online, Jonah Berger, because it will give you academic insights.
I'm going to challenge you to find it and tweet it to the hashtag ROICom and share it with everyone.
I'll do it in the break.
Yeah. Any other comments on this? What about how was the activity in terms of sort of applying what you learned and/or questions, concerns? Did this work as a way to sort of contextualize and apply what we've been talking about as a structure? Yeah?
But there is only one question I've got. There are some lines you can do things, but at a certain moment you get just bored of your agenda and you want to post some weird things which are sometimes don't get dislikes because you cannot go with 1 or 3 types of Facebook posting all the time. People get bored of it. And I think this is very challenging sometimes. How to diversify, where to search for innovation, and these kind of things.
Yep.
I just have a thought about what you were saying about, in a way, I don't know if it's probably been done. I can't imagine I'm original in this field, but the kind of scavenger hunt from one type of social media to the next. If you like this, then you share that, then you tweet it, and then tweet it to the Instagram, or I don't know, vice versa, or whatever. And how effective that might be, and if that's something that needs to be a more immediate kind of chain of events, or that's something that's better drawn, or will lose pace if you try to draw it out over time, if that's effective.
My initial response as a social media nerd is that most people are not like me. I could follow you through whatever platform you want to guide me to. I would bet that most of the people in this room do 1, maybe 2 platforms and no others, maybe 3 if you're kind of, but so, I'm on Foursquare, Twitter, Vine, Instagram, like on and on and on, but that's not really the case for most people. And people who, like some people are completely committed to Facebook, others are more Twitter oriented, so it depends who your audience is and how much attrition you can afford. If you really want to figure out who your most media savvy stakeholders are, that might work because they'll follow you. But it depends on the marketing goal, ultimately, I would say. Does anyone else have a thought on that?
I would just say I don't want redundancy of the same voices. Like there's certain people I would follow back on Instagram, but I may not actually follow her on Twitter, even though she's a good friend of mine, because I follow different kinds of people on Twitter. But,
That's another good point. And Agata, to your point about Facebook, I think about what you're asking in terms of the editorial calendar. And I'll just take Schusterman. I don't write Schusterman's content, but in working with and coaching the person who does, they have, from a marketing perspective, 4 pillars of things they care about. Diversity, inclusion, the environment, Israel, and education, right? And so and then they have all of their partners, all of their nonprofit partners. And so when they're planning their editorial calendar, Benny was constantly checking against these interests and the editorial schedule to make sure, am I covering them? And they were not posting more than once a day, twice if it was something major on Facebook. So I had to sort of space that out and then figure out, and this is going to be a photo-based post, and this is going to be so it's actually quite complex. We seem to be just messing around on the internet all day, but we're actually, planning and doing marketing, design, and copywriting, not very different from our peers who are designing for a magazine, a print ad, for example, or a television commercial. So that's how I address that, is to sort of make sure that I have a diversity of content in my editorial calendar spread over time that sort of hits the different subjects that I need to hit in a space of time that the community can stand. You definitely don't want to be pumping posts out constantly. You'll you know, we all have that friend on Facebook who's like, they never shut up and you hide, you never see them again. You don't want to be that. What?
Nothing relevant.
I brushed my teeth, I just ate a donut. You know, enough.
Whatever.
Right?
You said something earlier about your opinion about Instagram and linking, I think, Instagram to Facebook.
Oh, right. So, and I was going to show a video, which I don't know if I can. If you stick around, I'll show you the video on the computer. If you put a picture in Instagram and you link it to Facebook, it says, you know, Jessica just posted a picture via Instagram and the picture's this big. But if I post it to Instagram and then separately post it to Facebook, it shows up as the big square. And you really want the visual impact of your photo. So I don't tend to do it through Instagram. I tend to publish in the native platform whatever I want. That's how it will be optimized visually.
But then would you like do parallel campaigns or parallel whatever story?
Sometimes and sometimes not. Again, it depends on your goals and your audience you're trying to reach and etc. It depends on the campaign. You and then you.
When you link between Instagram to Facebook, you usually link between a Facebook user, not a Facebook page, right? So if you post a photo on Instagram and you want to put it on Facebook, it's posted on the user, not
You're right.
the page. So
You're right.
If you're managing a page for an organization or something.
Right. I don't think you can link a professional page to Instagram. Absolutely
So
right.
That's also why, like, not maybe to do.
Good point. Yeah.
Do you find that you have a different persona on the different platforms? Do you suggest yes or no?
Again, I think Facebook is a little more casual, a neighborhood block party per se, and Twitter is a professional business, a cocktail party, business party. So I would say that on Facebook, I might share pictures from my kids or just what's a little more about my day-to-day life than I would on Twitter. On Twitter, and that's what James is talking about, defining your personal brand on these platforms in the other room. And so on Twitter, let's say you I think it's for your personal brand, like I'll distill his message into 3 seconds. It's decide what your brand is. It's definitely who you are professionally and what you talk about professionally. So I talk about social media. I, for years and years, was in volunteer management. So I talk about volunteering and social good. I have an interest in change. So you'll see me tweeting about that. And then, you know, you might pick something else personal like I care about ballet. So those are the 3 things that I'm going to generally include in my brand. And that's what you'd heard from me on Twitter. You know, you sort of define who you are professionally. That's what they were talking about. Any other? Well, thanks so much for coming. If you want to see this video, I'll show you around my computer. But otherwise, I really appreciate it.